And we're live. And I think we're live. And I think that's what I'm going to rename the show is, and I think we're live. And I've got a very, how can I describe this man? His name is Mike Brunel. He gave me my first job in radio, 1987, along with Larry Somerville. And he is a lot of things to me. He's a mentor. He's a coach. In fact, the nickname that I give him is I go, "How you going, coach?" And I get a lot of free advice off him, which very cunning. So I've just learned how to do that. And but most of all, he's an incredibly good friend. And we sort of lost touch for many years because he went and did lots of things around the place. But we've got the friendship back on track over the last few years. Yep. So. And I've learned an enormous amount off him over the years. In fact, before we get started, I actually want to tell a story which I think is fantastic. And I don't know if you remember this, and hopefully I haven't added pieces to it that you're going, I don't actually remember that, Sean. I was a young copywriter, and I went into a certain client with an ad, and basically the client just made a fool out of me in front of a large group of people and just said, "Mate, your ad is shit, basically. It's just crap. It's just absolute shit," And I was just a young guy. I was 16, 17. And I went back, and a few months later, it doesn't matter who the client is, we won't talk about that. The client was in the boardroom with Mike Brunel, and they're talking about advertising. And in short, Mike turned around and said, "Hey, do you remember Sean? He came into your place, and young guy, 16, 17 years of age, and he played this ad to you." He says, "Oh, yeah, vaguely. Yeah, well, you didn't really make him feel that good. In fact, I think you actually made a bit of a dick of him. You sort of like took the mickey out of him." The guy goes, "Yep, so what's your point?" He goes, "Yeah, don't think we'll be doing business. Yeah, sorry about that." I've never forgot that. I've never, ever forgotten it. That was like 30 odd years ago. It was fantastic. So Mike is kind of like, he's a sales guru. He does a lot of work with a lot of companies. Sales guru, but also goes in and he helps businesses and goes, "Okay, this is what we need to do to turn this around." And we're really honoured. We have him on the Essential Talent roster to work with certain clients that are a good fit with them. So, mate, I've done enough talking. Why don't you talk us through where it all started? And because it's one hell of an adventure for you, and then we can. Throughout the chat, people, he's going to give us a bit of advice as well on how to generate sales in these challenging times. So I'm going to put you on full screen, mate. So I'm going to disappear for a second.
Well, yeah, okay, that sounds very exciting for you, mate. Yeah, so I guess my background is I've always been in sales pretty much all my life. As a young guy, I remember leaving a little small town called Blenheim, or we used to call Blim. And me and my mate went to go and play rugby in Sydney, and I got a job, calling on news agents, and every week I'd have to get all the stock in this big blue bag, and I'd put it in my car, and I used to go and sell door to door, and had a few clients in Sydney City, and I used to drag this big blue bag around and sell out of it, and I really learnt to sell because it was pretty tough, calling on people you didn't know, but I had no clue. And then I ended up here, doing some more OE and headed off to the UK, and I was cleaning carpets, and the carpet cleaning company was pretty amazing because they only serviced really expensive, areas of London. So I used to go into some of these most amazing houses. I mean, just mind blowing, and cleaning carpets. And then I ended up being an estimator. So I used to go around and estimate all the carpet cleaning and all those sorts of things. And we used to work a lot with from the United Arab Emirates, a lot of those folk, and they used to be the biggest tippers. You do a job and they tip you $300 or 100 quid. And then I came back to New Zealand, and I had a bit of a broken heart, and I've been with a woman for a while, a young lady, Ellie, and she gave me the hump, and I head back to New Zealand, my brother, in my brother's house. And one morning he came out and he said, "Hey, Mike, look at this. Here's an ad for a radio rep. Why don't you apply?" And I said, okay. I think he was trying to get rid of me just quietly. And I walked into this interview, and I had my brother's suit on, so my sleeves are up here, and I had looked pretty sharp. And I got the job as a radio rep at a little radio station at 93 FM in Napier, and I absolutely loved it. And you've been in the business long enough. The secret to getting on with clients is to build promotions and ideas, and that was really what I loved doing. I remember I brought Billy T. James to Napier to open Arthur Toy, and I've still got the photos. And Arthur Toy Fabrics, it was called. And then I got, I guess, headhunted by one of my mentors, Brian. And Brian said, "Hey, Mike, why don't you come to Palmerston North? We've got a radio station down there that needs a little bit of help, and I want you to be the sales manager." And I thought, oh my God, I've got no idea. And I remember I came from a bus from Napier to Palmerston North, and I remember walking down the steps to the bus, and here were all the sales team outside the front of the radio station, thinking, "Jesus, who's this dork?" And I felt, pretty small and embarrassed. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a great mentor, Brian, and Brian, and he became my business partner in the end, which I'll sort of touch on quickly, pretty shortly. But anyway, Brian was a great ideas man as well, and we built promotions and ideas onto this radio station. We turned it around, and that's when I had you on the team, and we had a great bunch of salespeople, and really, really loved that little radio station. It was the best station that I'd ever been on. It was called 2XS. I mean, what a great name for a radio station. Hey, 2XS. And
great.
I had a great story about Sean, actually, which I wanted to share with you guys.
What are you going to say? You go ahead and tell. I'm fine with that.
So I had a really interesting team. One was a guy called Lawrence, who was from the UK, which was just a super guy, and he always used to wear these bangles around his arm. So I got rid of those because, you don't go to your clients with bangles all over your arms. And then every now and again, Sean would have a big night. So he'd go out and do a bit of market research of a few of the hotels around the village. And one morning he came in quite, probably 8 o'clock, but man, I just looked at him and said, "Mate, you need to go home and have a shower." And it's sort of a long-standing story, isn't it, Shawnee?
It is, mate. Yeah.
But then I got headhunted to go and work in Wellington for a company called New Zealand Radio Sales, and we used to go to advertising agencies and sell radio as a medium, and it was just so much fun, and really loved it. And then I was headhunted by probably one of the geniuses of radio in New Zealand at the time, a guy called Doug Gold. Do you remember Doug, Shawnee? And Doug started the More FM network, and he asked me to come and join a company called Persuaders Concepts. I mean, what a name for a sales company.
You always say that, but I loved that name at the time. I just thought it was very kind of gangster. It was almost like these 4 or 5, sales gurus walking down the middle of the street in suits. I loved that name. I really did.
Well, it's funny because I'll tell you a story about why we ended up getting rid of it when we went into the US. But to cut a long story short, what Doug did was he basically launched More FM, and he came up with a concept called the Gold Key Program. I mean, his name was Gold, but he came up with this concept, the Gold Key Program. And what he essentially did was he pre-sold all his advertising in sort of like plans and packages and membership programs. And he pre-sold the radio station, and I think the revenue he generated was like $1.5 million before one song was played. And all the advertisers paid him on an automatic payment weekly. So you imagine the cash flow coming into that business, and they hadn't even played one song. And I remember, probably when they invited me in, Brian, my business partner, he went off to Aussie, and Doug. I remember sitting in some old back area of More FM at the time, and we were quietly building the company, and Brian said, look, you come and take over Persuaders New Zealand, I'll go to Australia. So I came in, and we lost 90% of the clients because it was me and not Brian. Anyway, Doug developed this concept called the Gold Key program, but what he did was he took it into a seminar. So what essentially he did was he invited advertisers to come and look and get to learn about the medium of radio, and he did that in a seminar. So 15 to 20 clients would come in, he'd do a presentation, and at the end of it, he'd ask the advertisers to join the program. And because it was a limited offer, there weren't many left. You know, I think the second year he sold $2 million in revenue in sort of like 2 weeks of forward revenue, unheard of at the time. And I remember probably a month before I joined Persuaders, I went to a Robert Kiyosaki. Now, you've heard of him, I'm sure, Sean. But he wrote that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I went to one of his seminars, and in one of his seminars, he taught you the power of leverage and how to look at a product and then put a system around it and then leverage it. So I'm sitting in these little mini seminars that Doug was running, and he was presenting a product, presenting an offer. It was a 12-month advertising campaign, and at the end of it, he said to the advertiser, if you make a decision now, I'll put you in the draw to win a BMW. And like the clients went ballistic. So I'm in this room and I'm watching him do that in the slideshow. I'm watching how the slideshow works. And then I'm watching all the sales reps. Like, these people were just buying this thing like there was no tomorrow. And so I said to Doug, is it okay if I sort of put a dictaphone underneath your lectern and I'll record the speech? He said, yeah, sure. And so I recorded the speech. I got the slides, and then I went to Australia and I presented the concept to my mate Brian. And Brian said, hey, I think we're onto something here, mate. So we went to a little radio station in Hobart, and they bought the product, and they sold $1.5 million in 3 days worth of radio advertising using this system. And I remember at the time, Sean, and I've told you this story before, Brian's sitting in the back of the room, right, with a little card, and he's got his little card in his hand, and he's only 4'2". But he did lift weights for the Commonwealth Games, didn't he? Remember him? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So he's sitting there on a piece of paper going 30, 25, 30. And they were the memberships we were selling each session. And when they're $5,000 a pop, you do the math. And he's sitting there and he comes up to me and goes, because they call me Brunel. He goes, Brunel, I think we're onto something here, mate. So fast forward, that one idea generated $250 million a year for 15 years. So we took that concept to Australia first. Then I went and lived in America for on and off for 2 or 3 years, and we launched it there. Then we had offices in Canada and the UK, and we had all over the place. And we had wonderful staff that were just absolutely amazing. And probably 4 or 5 years ago, we sold that company to a private equity company for my sins in the States, and I had to sit on the beach for 3 or 4 years. So and that was wonderful. But I got into consulting a couple of years ago because I wrote a book. As you know, you've got that book, and I started to work with some clients, and I'm very lucky. I've got 2 or 3 larger clients that I work with. So. Sorry, I'm talking so much, but that was kind of my background, you know.
This is it, yeah. Can you tell me some stories? Can we just go back a bit, because this was actually quite an amazing thing. You know, Doug Gold had started at More FM and had done an incredible job, but in the background, and I don't think everyone actually knew about this, that meanwhile in the background here was this incredible New Zealand-owned company doing amazing all around the world with this company called Persuaders, which ended up being called New Revenue Solutions. Can you tell us a little bit more? Just give us a few more insights into how you ran, without giving away trade secrets.
No.
Some of those.
Well, we sort of had a rule, right? So what we did was, if we sold 8 to 10 programs, because bear in mind, we didn't get salaries or anything, it was all commission. So if you sold $1 million worth of advertising, we'd get 100 grand, say 10% revenue, and that would be paid to us each month when the advertiser's paid, right? So an advertiser would buy a program, and some of the people listening know about these products are called clubs, etc. They'd buy the program and they would get 12 months worth of advertising charged every month. So we only lived on commission. So we had a rule: if we can get 8 radio stations, and then we turned into television, and then we turned into newspaper, and then we got a bit onto online. If we can get 8 to 10 radio stations, for example, if we were in Australia, I went to America and I got 8 to 10 radio stations, we could set an office up. That was our golden rule. And some of the stories around getting clients in America. I mean, Christ, we had our first radio station in Carolina, South Carolina. Was it South Carolina? Yeah, Greenville. I mean, no one goes to Greenville, mate. Seriously, but we had a radio station called 93 FM Country, and overnight, 2 weeks before we got to 93 FM Country, they were 93 something else. They changed their format overnight, and all the audience left. And we're sitting in this, these seminars. We generated 450,000 of a station that didn't have any listeners. So that was our first sort of gig. And then we started to progress each time. We had this wonderful relationship with a radio station in Sydney, actually, Mix FM. There's a guy that used to run that, John Williams, is an absolute legend, John. When we were working over there, we were generating 3 or 4 million at a time off these radio stations. So the product was really, in a way, Shawnee, it turned radio into a sort of a tangible product. Clients could understand it. So if you think of Xero as a company, amazing company, right?
Yeah.
That's all we were doing. We were selling continuity programs for radio stations all over the world, TV stations it turned out to be, and then newspaper companies. So and because radio is a little bit like airlines and TV, etc., once the airplane's up in the air and you haven't sold that seat beside you, it's gone forever, hasn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
So radio stations have a certain amount of inventory to sell, like advertising time, don't they? And you've run radio stations. You don't always sell out of it all, do you?
No.
So all we did was package up the stuff we didn't sell, put it into a seminar, continuity program, gave advertisers 1 week to buy it, because we did all these seminars 1 week, and that was it. But I remember one famous story within the company that we did was we got into Spanish. We started to get into Spanish-speaking stations. And so one of the boys, Kerry Marshall, absolute brilliant salesperson for our company. Kerry, I think Kerry tells us a story about a famous salesperson, Lou. And as you can understand, within this product, there was a system. Built a database, created a telephone sales, telephone sales promotion where the salespeople get in the radio station, ring all the clients and get them to these seminars, and then we'd go to the seminars and then we'd sell a product. Well, Lou was quite famous in this particular radio station in Buffalo, mate. Can you believe it? In Buffalo, New York. I mean, no one goes there either. I mean, it's a very cold, inhospitable place, and they all talk. They don't all talk like that, but they talk tough. So Lou was on the phone, and he's obviously talking to a client, and he says to the client, "Look, I want you to come to the seminar because we tell you how to use radio and TV and whatever." And the guy's obviously asking him more questions like, I can't do that at the moment. And Lou said, "Look, I want you to come along, mate. I want you to come along." And the client's obviously trying to get rid of him, you see. And he says, you can hear I couldn't hear the client, but Kerry was telling us the client was obviously saying, "Hey, Lou, look, I'll ring you back later. Look, I just want to get you off the phone." And Lou says, okay. Well, when you ring back, ask for the blue guy." And everybody's and literally there's 15 or 20 in this room because it's a boiler room type approach, and the whole room goes silent, and they're going, "Blue boy." And obviously the client's thinking, "Blue boy, what the? There's a blue boy." And Lou says, "Yeah, ask for the blue guy. I'll be the one holding my breath."
I love it. Hey,
yeah,
sorry,
I'm going on a tangent, but I think what we had the most amazing staff in that company, and NRS Media we called it, and the reason we called it NRS Media or New Revenue Solutions because our first business partner in America was called Joe Matthias III. He all talked like that, and he didn't like the name Persuaders. He thought it was a bit. So that's why we changed the name from Persuaders.
But what?
A bit dodgy, a bit, a bit New Zealand. I don't know, give me strength. But we changed it to New Revenue Solutions, and then it became NRS Media. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was a great company. And it had that same culture that you and I were brought up on, Sean, within the media companies.
Yeah.
Probably not there now as much as they used to be.
Well, I think they all sort of go through their different stages. Let's put it that way. Like I will say this about broadcasters. Let's forget about salespeople for 1 second. I think broadcasters today, you look at these young kids coming through in their 20s, and I look at them and I go, man, they're fantastic. They do everything. They do the radio. Then they go and, well, not just people in their 20s, we've got older mates in their 40s and 50s and 60s doing it as well. And they do their radio, but then they do TV, and then they do social media. And I just think we're in an era where these broadcasters are so bloody good. And you look at some of the guys in the past, in the earlier days, like you imagine someone like Derek Lowe, for example. Derek Lowe, Pacific, one of the smartest,
indeed,
creative guys I've ever met in my life. One of my favorite bosses, brilliant guy. You imagine him now at like 25 years of age. Can you imagine what he would be doing? It would be just out there. Can you imagine old right now and you and Doug right now, starting off your careers, you'd just be, you'd be just doing what you did with Persuaders and New Revenue Solutions, and you guys are still doing it anyway. Can you tell me this, mate? Is a salesperson, can anyone learn how to sell? Or is it, because I know that we do profiling and stuff like that, but I've met people throughout my life that know everybody, are so trusted, but they fail at that point of being able to. It's almost like they feel guilty in taking and making a sale when often they're solving a problem. And you sit down with them and you go, don't feel guilty about taking money from this client, because you're actually helping them, because you're going to take money that you're going to help them promote their business. They're going to be successful. They're going to make a lot of money. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, what can you coach anybody to be a good salesperson?
Yeah, I think I can, and that's why I wrote that book. It's called Selling is Not Optional. But I think one of the things is I think business owners, their best kept secret is their business, Sean, right? And they don't sometimes want to share that. But if it's kind of like it's the way you frame your mind. If don't call it sales, call it something else. If you have a problem with sales, it's like reframing it. Like I say to many of my clients, like I work with a small goods company in Wellington. It's a little ripper of a company, and there's 2 or 3 of the people have been brought in to help build the company. And I said to them in the beginning, look, we're a sales company selling small goods. Just change your mindset around what you do. So within the company, everyone's thinking about, okay, how can we share our secret about how wonderful our product is? And that's really what selling's all about. And if you're a business owner listening to this, or anyone or any teams that I work with, if you believe in your product, you sell with your heart, and you have integrity and honesty, then you have an obligation to sell that product, Sean. And if you're employed by someone that help you do that, you're in a way and you've worked with a lot of business owners that have that. Oh, look, I'm not in sales, Mike. Oh, I hate that word, sales. Call it something else.
Yeah.
Call it, greeting the client with a smile. I don't care what you call it, but you've got to change your mindset because, I look at my wife's business. She's in retail, and she's an old pharmacist by trade, but now she's in retail. She goes out and does interior designers for client. Her hit rate's 10 out of 10, mate. It's unbelievable. Because she's just herself and she loves the product and she believes in the product and she recommends it. And you're absolutely right, Sean. You've got to find out the problem that particular client's got first. And then what you've got to do is you've got to figure out, what is the motivation for them to fix that problem? And if their motivation isn't enough, then that's not the problem. You get my drift?
Yes, I do.
So going back to your question, I think anyone that's listening to this that thinks they're a sales or doesn't like sales, one, call it something else, or also just sell what you believe in.
Yeah.
And just be yourself. And I mean, it's worked for me. I remember Brian Duffy and I were selling in a big seminar in Sydney one time, and he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Brunel, I can't get this guy over the line. I just can't. I've tried, and I need your help." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I walked up to the client, and he was a nice person, and he just wasn't sure. He was, couldn't make his mind up. And I just said to him, "You know what, mate? You don't have to take this,
Okay.
And guess what? He took it. So sometimes you don't have to buy it if you don't want to. And Brian was looking at me going, "How'd you do that?" And he was a magic. He sort of had that mentality as well. Is that? And I think that's another thing I'd like to give if I got a bit of time around. You've got to accept and I talked to you about this a few weeks ago. You've got to accept with a client that you're trying to figure out if you're a fit. So
yeah.
The sale actually begins at the beginning. It starts at the beginning.
Yes.
So if I'm talking to a client, I'll say, "Hey, look, give me a call, get onto my website, give me a ring. I'll sit with you for half an hour and let's see if we're a fit first. If we're not a fit, then don't worry, it wasn't meant to be. Because why should I pressure that person to buy my product?"
Yeah, now this is a good point. I want to dig into this a little bit deeper if you don't mind. We're getting a bit of free advice here from Mike Brunel, one of the best sales minds, seriously, not in just New Zealand and Australasia, maybe the world. He's done it all. We talked about this the other day, a bit of free coaching that I managed to tap into. You is that I know that I get so passionate about my product that I put something out there, and I just want to follow up, and I just want, hey, have you made a decision? You talk us through this because the pressure is going to be on a lot of businesses, right? And you try and that's what I find anyway. You try and discipline yourself. You go, "Sean, just calm down. They've got the proposal. Just leave it there." But on the other side of things, you are wanting to get an answer and move things along. How do you get that balance right, Mike?
I think again it gets back to the start of the call, start of the approach, start of the presentation. Like me, if I get clients that call me up, in their mind they're very wary. They think, "Okay, Mike's a great guy. When's the sale going to come? When's he going to leap out of the computer and grab me by the neck and go, buy, buy, buy?" I mean, so you as a salesperson have got to say, "Okay, you've kind of got to open up the conversation." And sometimes I say to clients, "Look, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to find out what you're trying to solve here." Now, they might have heard that 100 times, but a lot of them, you can just hear the air come out of them go, So look, what I'd like to do is find out a little bit about, where you are now and where you want to be. So present state, future state, and I'll see if I can help you. But just are you open, which is a really good phrase. Are you open to me asking a few questions around, what you're doing and why you've rung me and all those sorts of things. And you just have to ask enough questions that you feel comfortable. So I did that with a person last week, and I think I found out the problem in the last 5 minutes of the call. And
really?
that was that she was really good whenever she got a referral, she always closed it.
Whenever what? Sorry.
A referral. So someone had said, "Hey, ring Sean. He's great. You know, if you want a guy to help your sales team out, you get a hold of Mike Brunel, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
But I only found that out in the last 5 minutes of the call, Sean.
Yeah.
So, and then I've gone back to her and said, "Look, I think what we need to do is build a referral program," which is a little system I've got, right, to help her get more referrals by asking for them. She never used to ask for them. So she'd do a really good job. And then she'd say, "Oh, thanks, bye." As opposed to, "Hey, look, are you really happy with my work? Can you just, if you would be open to this, do you know anyone in your particular circle?" Because if you ask for referrals, for example, you don't say, "Oh, do you know anybody that would use my services?" Because people can't think that big. But if you say to them, "Hey, look, I wonder if you'd be able to help me in your circle of friends and have similar businesses to you, or you know, is there anyone that you'd recommend that perhaps I could go and have a chat with?" Right? So that's so getting back to my point is, you've got to let your client, and by asking good questions, to find the discovery. So you found a problem, you go back to them with a proposal. But what I do is I never put the price in the proposal.
Okay.
Now, in the case of media, it's slightly different because they want to know the number.
Yeah.
But I just go back and say, "Hey, look, here's my thinking. Would you be open to another phone call, and I can go over what the investment might be?"
Right.
Now, that doesn't apply in all cases.
No.
But you've done this, Sean. We used to teach our sales guy, for God's sake, don't give the client the proposal, because guess what they do? Go to the back page. So I think it's about trying to build trust early in the call. Yes. Because clients, I think they do feel the pressure. And this is how the pressure works. "Hi, it's Mike Brunel here from NRS Media." For 10 minutes about how wonderful your company is. And he or she's going, "Salesperson, blah, blah, blah." So that's probably one tip would be useful, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just to wrap things up, because you've been very generous with time, half an hour, is that what's some advice that you would, because you help people with sales, you've generated, your company generated over a couple of $100 million worth of sales around the world. What is some advice that you would give to a small to medium-sized business that is, been in lockdown for, God knows how long? They're going back, they're trying to get into their business. What's some pointers that you would give on how to tackle things, from a
well, there's a couple of things, because I'm in retail as well as importing, as well as I've got a cafe, for God's sake. So so I'm in the thick of it. But I think over this 4 weeks has been a great opportunity for our clients to build relationships with the clients they've already got. So I think there's been enough talk fests going on around the world to say, look, you've got to look after the clients you already got. So my theory is 80% of your revenue comes from about 20% of your clients, Shawnee, right? So and they might, if you've got 100 clients, that's 20. Well, a bit less than that. So you've got to look after them like there's no tomorrow, because they bring the bulk of the revenue. Excuse me. Also, what you've got to do is, when you turn up at the business, maybe it's time now to change the mindset in the business and start training your people in the business to think more about sales and asking lots of questions. So, for example, when a client walks into a store, you don't go, "Can I help you?" I mean, that's got to be one of the oldest statements in the world. What about, "Hey, welcome to our store. Have you been in here before?"
Yeah.
It's all about opening up the conversation. And, different things like that you can do. And also, one of the things that I reckon is a really good one, and it's about human beings love face-to-face. They love that touchy-feely. They like to be in a tribe, if you will. And this whole sort of rambling on about, "Wow, this is really good staying at home." Well, I rang my sister last night in Christchurch, and your mum's there, right? Still? Is your mum still down there? Is she Timaru? Where's your mum?
Timaru, yeah.
Yeah, but my sister was locked down for 18 months in the earthquake, mate, at home.
Far out.
And she said, people have got no idea. You'll be killing each other if you're doing this for 3 months. So now's the time to get out and touch your clients. So how you do it in this is write them thank you notes for their business, Sean, and send it to their address or whatever. Just don't do it on email. Just buy a whole lot of cards from the warehouse. I don't care where they are. And say, hey, look, thanks for your business. We really appreciate it. We're going to be open on this day. Thanks for your business.
Yes.
You know, and we used to teach, and this is a good one for sales directors, by the way, that might be listening, that we used to do that to our salespeople. We'd recommend media companies to do it, that you'd send the thank you note to their home address. You know, because as sales directors, here's my tip for you sales directors if you're listening. Look after your clients, but look after your people first. And that was always something that you and I, we always prided ourselves on that, didn't we?
Yes.
Because guess what? When you're in the crap, if they aren't on your side, they'll just tell you to get stuffed and go somewhere else. So you've got to nurture those young people. And you know, I've been having a bit of debate on a couple of Facebooks about radio as a medium and TV and a few other things, and I've been copping a bit because I'm an old guy. But the young ones are just amazing, as you've said. But what they've got to do is, the most successful people I've learned, and you've done this, and you and I know a few, right? They're always in the middle of something like this. They're always increasing their knowledge. They're always so successful. People invest in themselves.
Definitely.
All right. So I think, you know, what one company I work with has got a book club on this sort of stuff, and they share it amongst their team.
Yeah.
So the owner buys a book and then says, okay, I'm going to buy 3 or 4 books. We're going to send around the group, and we're going to do a little session in our sales meeting around what you learned from the book. So just as an owner and a business owner, if you can just do little things like that, but love your staff and look after them and treat them really well, and they'll do a lot for you. But teach them how to just change their mindset around selling. If you don't like the word selling, call it something else. Greeting the clients. So Robert, my bit.
Robert Scott.
Yeah.
Robert Scott said, loving this. I really enjoyed working with Mike and Brian at 2X. He has so much passion. Robert Scott, for those of you who don't know who he is the, and I think most people do, he is now the #1 rating drive show announcer throughout New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we always knew that would happen, didn't we?
You did. No, wonderful person, wonderful man.
Because he is a brilliant man.
He was good looking when he was younger too, wasn't he, Shawnee?
He wasn't bad, was he? No, he's one of these guys that doesn't age.
No, unbelievable. It makes you sick.
And the Peter Pan of radio. But, you know, there is someone that, once again, I think it is about just going, without sounding cliched, it's about up each morning and going, how can I be better than what I was yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely.
He preps harder than anyone else. He's always wanting to get the best show. And, you know, that's what we're all about.
He showed that. I mean, you think about that little media company in Palmerston North, 2XS.
Oh.
I mean, you know, you see some of the people coming there. Sue Foley, we know, you know, wonderful woman at Westpac. You know, Brian and I came out of it pretty well. You got Rob. You know,
Roger Beaumont.
Roger
Beaumont he's the big guy in banking these
Yeah.
days.
So all those guys and lovely Larry, God bless him, and wonderful Jeremy Miller. That, you know, all those guys, they were, you know, that was quite a nursery.
Yeah.
For entrepreneurial broadcasters that went on to do, you know, were lucky enough with. I mean, my success really is a lot to do with my mentors, you know, and my support.
Totally.
And that's what you got to have as well. Find someone that can tell you when you're not doing as well as you should be.
I always say to people, surround yourself with good bastards. And it's because they'll always do it. Here's from Catherine Lindsay Ryder.
Yeah.
Well, and I think she's a very good friend of my mum's.
Okay. Hello.
And she says, "Wow, this is fantastic. I think I need to get Mike's book, and my husband would love listening to this too." Well, I tell you what, Catherine, I have got a couple of copies of Mike's book because, you know, he's the coach. He sends me this stuff. And so I'm going to send you a copy of his book. You message me, and I will send you a copy of it because I really appreciate the comment. Roy Kellard, who I think is one of your clients, isn't he? Aren't you?
Yeah, no. Okay, Roy Meister.
And he just says, and this is making me a little emotional, he goes, "You guys look the same age. Love working." Mike is slightly older than me.
Yeah, 50 plus years too.
My friend Tom Davidson, the late Tom Davidson,
yes,
we always used to go to different places around New Zealand, and he was about 10 years older than me, and everyone would go, "Yep, Sean, you're older, aren't you?" And he'd laugh his ass off. Catherine Lindsay Ryder, your sister. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but whatever, Catherine, I'm going to send you a copy of the book.
Right.
Sean Fay says 2 legends there.
Oh, thank you, Shawnee. How are you, boy?
What is the best Sean Fay story that you can tell that he may get embarrassed about, but that we wouldn't get a lawsuit over? Because
I couldn't. I tell you what, I couldn't share one, but I'll tell you what he was. Absolutely single-minded, one of the best copywriters around, and he didn't take any crap from anyone. And I remember he used to get so wild with the sales reps because they didn't. And that's one of the challenges I think for media these days is to get back to creative and get back to those wonderful copywriters. And I mean, you and I know Sean. There's that mad one, Ansel, but he's a mad one as well as. But Sean has this really single-minded approach to saying, get stuffed. I'm writing the copy. I know what's best for the client, and he's written some magical advertising, hasn't he?
I'll go one step further.
Yeah.
I will say that Ralph Van Dyke, Sean Fay, and John Dixon, all New Zealanders, 3 of the best radio copywriters in the world. That's what I would say. Those guys know their stuff, and once again, they are, as you say, they have always, throughout their career, always cared about their craft, but always wanted to sell the product. Those 3 guys have never gone, "Oh yeah, but I want to do it because it's going to be really funny, and can we have some tap dancing elephants?" It's like, no. If we do it this way, if we do it creatively, we will sell more product for the client. They've always spoken really passionately about that. Ralph Van Dyke.
Yeah, absolutely.
3 best writers. 3 of them.
And the likes of, creative people in media, especially, and I don't want to get onto it, but if you're a small business owner and find a good copywriter, and Sean Fay's one, just Google him, but he will create stories for your business that you never thought possible because they're storytellers, aren't they? Just like you and I are. Storytelling's a very powerful, I guess it's in advertising in general. There's a great story about this, young sales rep that turns up at this guy's business, and he's on the bottom of a hill, right? And just above him is a church, right? And that church has been there, a little while. So this young lady's going back and forth to this guy, and he won't buy advertising, and she says to him one day, "Mr. Client, how long's that church been up there on the hill?" He said, "It's been there 150 years, and I go every Sunday." And she said, "Well, they ring the bell every Sunday, don't they? Wouldn't it be a good idea for to ring your bell a little bit more often, sir?" And it's a great message, isn't it? Storytelling to get a message across. And to me, Sean and those guys are brilliant at that.
Are you MikeBrunel.com?
I am. Mike at MikeBrunel.com. Yeah, is the email, I think, and MikeBrunel.com.
Okay.
All right.
Is that right there?
Right there, Jimmy.
Eh?
Yep, bang on.
Got that right.
Yeah.
My mentor.
Yep.
Coach.
Thank you.
My awesome friend. Thank you so much for your time. You're an amazing guy. We love having you on the Essential Talent roster. And I'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, okay, buddy. Thanks. And pleasure to be on the show.
Thanks, Brunel.
How was that?